Welcome to School for Relationships, and thank you for tuning in to this mini-series on how to heal from enmeshment and how you can navigate the ways that your healing process may change your relationships. I'm really excited for this series. We'll have a shorter video every day of this week, and this first video is a really juicy one. The theme we'll be diving into is how we can accept guilt and self-doubt as a part of our healing process. If you grew up in a family with blurry boundaries or have been in relationships with blurry boundaries for a long time, you may have been taught since childhood or for years that prioritizing other people's needs over your own is what makes you a good and lovable person. And maybe you've never felt safe and supported expressing certain needs and feelings. And if you have important needs that have never or rarely been validated, you may unconsciously fear that there is something wrong, bad, or selfish with what you need. And over time, you may have come to internalize other people's fear and judgment and rejection of your needs. And this may lead you to only feeling good enough when the people around you seem happy and are responding to you in positive ways, which a lot of us feel and experience, but involves basically outsourcing our sense of safety. Keeping other people happy or at least appeased is then what makes us feel safe. And what's making us feel unsafe is who we really are and how we really feel. You may not feel safe because of some unnamed thing within you that you're afraid of, which usually goes back to a part of you that was judged or rejected. And because what you're afraid of is who you are, you may then live in a permanent state of low-grade anxiety. You may feel like the only thing that you can do to stay safe is continue to please and appease the people around you and constantly monitor yourself so the bad parts don't come out, and try to either hide or change the undesirable and unlovable parts of who you are. And this perpetual state of unfocused anxiety is like this cloud that's hovering over us, and it is clouding the way we see everything, but especially the way you see yourself. And it confines you to perceiving the world from the fear-based parts of your brain. And when your anxiety is activated, what happens when we're in those parts of our brains is that you lose sight of the long term and hyper-focus on these short-term risks that you assess as a bigger threat to your safety than they actually are, which makes you more risk-averse than is actually helpful for you. And as long as your sense of safety is dependent on the approval of others, maybe all you can see is the immediate risk that speaking up for your needs has to cause conflict, hurt, or displeasure. And you may take actions that then avoid hurting or displeasing other people in the short term, but perpetuate a long-term relationship where you're feeling unsafe being fully yourself and unfulfilled, and eventually maybe even resentful. And this short-term thinking is locking you into a narrow either-or mindset where it feels like you have to choose between meeting other people's needs and your own. When we're trapped in this short-term either-or thinking, we lose sight of the very significant long-term costs that neglecting our needs and feelings have on our health and the health of our relationships. All of this fear and how deep-seated and physical and visceral it feels makes sense, because when you look back at how humans have survived throughout our history, social rejection and abandonment was legitimately life-threatening. On a deep unconscious level, every fear that we have connects back to a fear of death. And for most of human history, again, social rejection came with this risk of being cast out from our community, which could lead to our death or injury or serious deprivation. Being accepted in our tribe was fundamental to our survival. So even though social rejection used to be life-threatening, it usually no longer poses a significant and immediate threat to our safety, but our brain and nervous system is still programmed to respond as if it does. So individuating can feel kind of like facing a sort of death. But living a life with no sense of who you are and what really matters to you is not really living. Many people only begin the process of individuating and healing because they've hit a real wall and just can't keep going the way they have been. If you've been feeling unfulfilled, unseen, and anxious for a long time, you yourself may be starting this process more out of resignation than self-acceptance. And you may feel like you have no choice but to start making different decisions that honor your needs and what makes you feel alive. As you begin making your first autonomous and independent decisions, you may still judge yourself really heavily for doing this and feel like finally having hit your limit proves that you are weak, bad, or selfish. Breaking out of whatever mold you were trying to fit into may at first feel like a confirmation of your worst fears, that there is something inherently wrong or flawed with you that's preventing you from just going with what makes other people happy and easily fitting in. And each autonomous decision and expression of your true needs and feelings may come with, again, those deep-seated fears that other people will judge, reject, or shun you. So you may go through an initial phase of questioning and doubting almost every decision you make. Facing guilt and the fear that focusing on your own needs is selfish or will hurt other people is an unavoidable step in healing from enmeshment. Avoiding taking any action that has the potential for making you feel guilty is what kept you trapped in the cycle of self-abandonment. So when it comes to healing from enmeshment, there is no way around guilt except through it. By moving through guilt rather than avoiding it, you're taking the first and most important step to heal and release old fears you may have been carrying for most of your life. Finally, you are facing and healing the fear that there is something wrong or bad with who you are, that you are not enough, that you are not safe being yourself, and that there is anything about you that is unlovable.